Welcome to today's podcast episode. As we say in our show, we like to use this podcast to be able to explore how TTRPGs have a deeper impact on the people who experience them, and therefore we are more than D&D characters. Today we have special guest Chris Daly here with us. He is an incredible TTRPG artist, and I'm so excited to be able to have him on our show. He has social media pages where he showcases his art and has done a lot of really incredible projects. And I was particularly excited to work with you because you had reached out to us and said like, hey, I want to be on the show. And since this show is so new and we haven't, at this point in time, we haven't even like actually produced or released an episode yet. I was just excited that you were open to it. So yeah.
Oh yeah. I was excited. Nothing is better than doing audio content for visual art. So I'm sure it's going to be great.
No, honestly,
no, I do a lot of podcasting and stuff too. And I was like, hey, I already got the setup. Like, let's let me throw my hat in the ring and see if that's something that sounds interesting. So
oh yeah,
I'm happy to help you out.
Absolutely. No, I'm excited because even though, mixing that audio and like visual art is kind of a little bit of a funny combo. I love that we can just talk about it and kind of really dive into the concepts of it without even having seen any of the art. And then of course, I feel like people are going to want to see what you have and what you've got going. And, then kind of put the visuals to a lot of the conversations we're having. And I kind of think that's a unique way to go about it. So I'm excited. It'll be fantastic. Okay, anything just right off the bat that you want like our listeners to know about who you are and what you do?
I am an illustrator. I like to draw funny pictures and cool D&D drawings.
Love it.
I've been fortunate enough to my big pitch, my short elevator pitch is I do commission work, but I also do commercial work, and I am an art director and social media director for Beetle and Grimm's, which makes premium box TTRPG sets and dice and things like that. So I do their social media along with my full-time job. And I'm a dad, and I do podcasts. I have two podcasts that I do. One of them is a D&D podcast called Knights of the Roll Table. And I also do a comic book podcast called Comic Book Keepers, co-host that. And we talk about comic book characters and villains and teams and stuff like that. So I got a lot of things going on.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I didn't even know about, I think, every single one of those things. So hearing you list all of them out, that's like a lot of projects. But I love, there's variety there, you know? Yeah. It sounds like you get to be involved with a lot of different things that you're passionate about. So that is so fun.
My wife would say too many.
Too many. I think
but she's very supportive.
Yes. I feel like I've
many endeavors.
Yes. I feel like I've had that conversation with Kate a couple of times. Like, do we need another project, another hobby? Questionable, but we want to stay supportive as well. Okay, very good.
Have you had those times where you're like, oh, I'm going to get into this, or maybe I'll pick up this hobby, or I'm going to do this, and they're like, no. No, we're not going to do
yes. that. Sometimes that is absolutely the attitude. So yeah, it happens. Sometimes we got to know when to pull back, and other times, you just got to go for it. Kate and I like to say, follow the dopamine. When we have like a new something, we'll say, follow the dopamine. Just let it go. See how far it takes you.
I like that. You should be happy doing what you're pursuing. Like that's the whole reason I got into doing this kind of art, is because it was just what I was passionate about, and I was like, I really want to do a lot of this. I want to do more of this, and I could do other things. I could probably make more money by doing things that I don't want to do, graphic design and stuff like that. But that's not what I want to do. So I chose the harder path with more personal reward, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I love that. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, because we'll jump into a little bit of like your story and how you got to doing what you're doing. But I just love that you had a passion for art, which so many do, right? But that it was something that you pursued. I think that's like part of the reason why I'm like excited to have a conversation with you about this, is because, and not to put anybody down who, you know, art is a little bit more of like their hobby or just something that is more of a side passion kind of thing that they haven't really pursued. But I just love how much you've been able to do with it, because that takes a ton of hard work and dedication, you know?
Yeah.
So that's just fantastic. So as always with the show, we'll kind of jump a little bit into your D&D story, your background, and kind of what that's looked like. And then we'll jump into talking more about the impact that TTRPG art has on D&D players and kind of beyond that. So the first question I always ask people is, I just want to know, like, what first introduced you to TTRPGs?
Oh man. So my earliest memories were my sisters used to play back when I was like 6 or 7, and I didn't know it was D&D. I just knew it was like graph paper and dice, and I was like, that looks like math, and I don't like math. So I was like, you go play your whatever that game is, and and it looked very messy, and that was like, it must have been like second edition or maybe even first edition in the 80s. So that was my first kind of passive introduction, but my first real introduction was I had, you know, experimented with. I had experimented a little bit, like in the 2010s with some board games and like, you know, like getting into like Catan and Munchkin, King of Tokyo, and stuff like that. And I was just like more and more. And I had some friends at work that were kind of like, I overheard them. I was just in the right place, at the right time, kind of talking about like, oh, we're gonna play D&D later, and I was like, oh, you guys play? Like, I was always kind of like wanted to play, but I never found anybody that wanted to do it, or I mean, the classic struggle. And I kind of weaseled my way in. I was like, I would love to play with you guys sometime, and luckily they were like, yeah, come on, you know, like come next week or whatever. And I had to figure out how to roll a character up, and that was the most stressful week of just like, how do I make this character? And I probably made like the worst character. I made a dragonborn monk, which is probably not a great combination. Like it's,
you know what?
I was just like, oh,
it's so funny as a new player how stressful character creation is. It really is.
Yeah.
It's complex. There's a lot to understand for the very first time. And it's funny how much like people who love D&D will just make characters for fun. You know, like that's just the chill, easy breezy creative part of it, you know? But I do feel like I would say the first couple characters most people make is like, it is a stress session. So yeah, I'm glad that we have that shared experience.
It was so like a little bit overwhelming, and I had to keep going back, and I was like to the DM, and I was like, is this right? Like, am I doing these numbers right? This doesn't sound, what does 17 mean? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, you know, but I mean, what I realized, you know, after the fact is it doesn't matter. Like you can have a terrible stat character. You don't have to min max a character as long as long as it's something that you want to do. If you want to be a gnome, be a gnome. If you want to be a dragonborn or a Goliath or a sentient ooze or whatever, like just be that.
Yeah.
And I mean, it for everyone that's played Baldur's Gate 3, it's the character creation process is so fun because you're making every little change and picking a hairstyle and color and tattoos and piercings and everything. And that's very similar to what that character creation is when you're playing for the actual game. And a lot of similar things to like what I do when I work with people to make their art.
For sure. That's awesome. So you mentioned like that very first game that you'd played. Was that more of a one shot? Was it a longer campaign that you ended up being a part of?
Yeah, it was an already existing long campaign. They were at level 5, and I jumped in at level 5. And I think the first session that I was in, I was like, you know, kind of indoctrinated into the group, and we ended up playing that same group for another 4 years or so, and then we finally wrapped up a couple of years ago, and it was pretty fun. It took a while to get there, but but it was really neat to kind of have a conclusion. It was all based on like the demon lords and coming up from hell and the material plane. We have to like banish them back and everything. Is very very hell driven kind of plot line, but it was exciting.
That is so exciting. I love that. And I love long campaigns, to be able to have, hopefully you got like a good chance to get attached to that character and like, play them out and everything.
And they died.
Oh my goodness. I have to know.
He got disintegrated.
Okay, got disintegrated. Was that in combat?
He got disintegrated. It was after combat. I had just avoided I basically outran as a monk. I had a crazy run speed, and I outran Garistro like he was chasing me.
Oh my gosh.
And I ran back to the party, and all of a sudden he was like, you roll a dex check, and I'm a monk. I'm like, okay, whatever. And I crit failed.
Oh.
And even with high dexterity, saving throw, I failed the save, and it was with disintegrate, and it was an assassin who had disintegrate, and I just turned to dust. It was like, oh dear.
Whoa.
So that stung, but I rolled up another character, and I was like, oh okay, and it went on.
Yeah. Well, and then you got to find the joy in the next character, and sometimes it's nice to have something new and shiny, but also like, man, character death is so hard. And I mean, I think, well, I don't know. I'm actually curious if you feel that character death is generally pretty rare. Do you feel that?
I don't think it happens too often. I mean, I think generally people want to stick around with something they've put time and effort into, and it's not just about like, it's not like a video game where like you can die and die and die and eventually you'll get there. It's like you're playing this character because you want to kind of experience their life and everything like that. And when you build a new character, you have to kind of get used to those. It's like new pants. Like you're trying to like work in those pants. That's a terrible metaphor.
No, I really do understand though. I get what you're saying. Yeah.
It's I don't think it happens too often. I mean, I think that just really comes down to session zeros and talking with the DM and the group about like, do we want to die a lot? Do we want this to be high stakes, or do we want this to be fun, frou-frou shopping episodes, joking around, nobody dies? I mean, like, if you don't want to die, just say, I don't want to die. And there can still be really high stakes. If high stakes to you means I've lost all my stuffed animals that my character always carries around, then that's high stakes. If high stakes means at any point you can lose a limb, like you just have to define what that is.
Totally.
And it can be ridiculous, or it can be like actual death, or it can be more than death. It can be undead or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it definitely depends on the campaign for sure. Okay, so now knowing a little bit of how you got into TTRPGs in the first place, tell me about how you kind of crossed into TTRPG art. Actually, no, I want backwards even more. I want to know where you started with art in general. Let's go to that before we get to the TTRPG art part.
Well, I think with a lot of artists, I started with comic strips, comic books. I mean, I remember drawing since I was in elementary school and just drawing little cartoons and stuff like that. And then I think what really kind of kicked in the comic strip love was I started collecting all those, when you have in school, they give you like those the troll book clubs or like the little Scholastic book fair.
Yes. Oh yes.
You got to like order books. So I ordered like every Garfield book.
Yeah.
And every like Far Side and Calvin and Hobbes and stuff like that. And I would just like read through those and love those. And then I was collecting them. And then I started making my own comic strips. And then after I got into comic books, I got into Ninja Turtles and X-Men and in the 90s and started drawing more comic book stuff. And that really influenced my style. I was doing more humans and humanoids and things like that. I didn't put this on my thing, but I did 2 webcomics in the early 2000s.
Oh, cool.
For about 10 years.
Wow.
They finished. I was happy to like actually do a complete storyline. Over 1,000 strips, over about 10 years or so. I went to conventions, stuff like that. So that was a really good, like, exercise discipline of like put out 2 comics a week, 3 comics a week, or whatever the schedule was. And very challenging. I don't know if I'm going to do it again. It's exhausting.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But it's really cool just to be like, look at all this stuff I did and all this stories I told and characters and everything. And after that, I was trying to find, well, what's next? And I did storyboarding for a little bit, and then that didn't really stick. And I did, oh, well, I should mention, so in the mid 90s, I got a job as a caricature artist. So all this time when I'm doing my own projects, I was learning caricatures at theme parks. So I would be the guy that, is standing on the side and be like, hey, you want to get drawn?
I love that. I love that.
And learning how to, but it helped me draw really fast. So if anybody's out there that's like, I can't draw people, or it takes me too long, get a job as a caricature artist, because you will learn. You're looking at faces over and over and over and over and over again, and you will get fast. I could draw a black and white face in under 2 minutes. And then color it in 5 minutes, so like you get really fast, because that's how you make money.
Mm-hmm.
But then what I realized is that like that helped me like sketch fast and draw fast and concept characters. And when I got into this D&D group in 2016, I immediately was just like, well, I want to draw my character. And I started looking at all the artwork for Dragonborns and stuff. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to draw my own. And then I started doing characters for my fellow players. And then I was like, maybe I could do this for other people. And I kind of looked on Etsy, and at the time, it was like, okay, there's people that do that. And so then I made my own Etsy store and did that for a while. And it kind of grew from there, I think.
Yeah.
Doing commission work and team portraits and stuff like that. And then once I started doing TikTok, that's when it really, really blew up. And I was like, why would I do a TikTok for art? Like it's the same thing we kind of talked about. It was like art, it's visual, but like this whole video. And then somebody's like, well, you could do time lapse drawings. And I was like, oh, well, yeah, I could do that. And so that really worked out.
Yeah, wow, you've done so many different things. And I feel like, as a creative, being an artist, I mean, we did kind of talk about chasing the dopamine, right? It kind of seems like you've found different things you've been interested in. I mean, the web comics that you had done, amazing. But like you said, I don't know that you could have done that for your whole career, for, more and more and more and more years than you already did, which was already like so much. I don't know. So I just love that you've like also taken that and been a little bit opportunistic with that. I'm curious what your experience was like when you started doing the TTRPG art on Etsy, because I feel like I hear a lot of interesting things about being an artist on Etsy.
It's a little hit and miss. I mean, you have to put a lot into it to get something out of it. And the reason I eventually stopped Etsy is because I was getting a lot of group commissions, and they were fun, but it took like 3 or 4 months to work on those, because it would be like 5 or 6 people. And then it was a lot of back and forth with whoever was doing it, usually the DM, and they would be getting stuff from their players, and then they'd send it to me. And, it took a while to get, and then here's the sketch and here's the inked version, and it was a lot of approval process. And so when you're just doing one character for one person, it's very quick. It's maybe like 2 or 3 weeks. But then for groups, it was just taking so long. So then somebody would be like, hey, I want to hire you, and I'm like, yeah, I'll be ready in 2 months. So it was hard to get more work and show that I was doing stuff. And there's, besides the stuff on Etsy, like you kind of have a couple samples, but there wasn't really any community, essentially. So there's still a lot of people on Etsy. There's some great artists, great options on Etsy, on Fiverr. I mean, there's a lot of options out there. You just have to kind of vet them and see like what kind of artwork they do and what they've done before and things like that. And I find probably the most reliable ones and I try to put myself in this category, are people that you find on like Instagram or ArtStation, and then they just put out their rates,
Mm-hmm.
Etsy takes a big chunk
Yeah.
of what you sell. So that's why I eventually kind of got out of that, is like, try to make a little bit more from the total sale.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For sure. For sure. Well, I love that you found social media. And I think it didn't cross my mind until you said it, but it's like, oh yeah, of course, that sense of community that growing a social media page can give you is just amazing. And it's like, it is unique. Where else do you get that?
Yeah.
Especially as an artist, like when I think of just traditional art decades ago before we had social media, right? It's like, wow, what a cool little corner of the internet you can create by doing something like that. And I feel like you've totally been able to do that. And I love that. I'm curious too, though, because I mean, no matter what you do, it's going to be a bit of a grind. But I do feel like social media is a serious grind sometimes. So
Oh yeah.
especially at the beginning, like when you were just starting to grow that community, grow some followers, how were you able to just keep that consistent?
That's a good question. I had done, I had posted uh, drawings on Twitter at the time when it wasn't crazy, and because there's a pretty healthy D&D community on Twitter,
For sure.
and I started doing stuff on Instagram before I did Dungeon Heads as like a title, like as a sort of business name. I just put it under my like personal Instagram. So what I noticed is I was putting stuff like, here's a drawing I've done, and here's a photo of my dog, and I wasn't really serious about it. And then
Mm-hmm.
after a couple of years, I was like, I need to like make another account and just do that. And then I did. Some artists will know there's a yearly challenge called Inktober,
Yes.
which is really cool because it's a challenge where you draw a black and white, or the official challenge is you draw a black and white drawing every day of the month of October.
Mm-hmm.
And there's prompts, and you can follow the prompts. You can just do your own thing, or you can do color or whatever. I mean, it's very loose. It's just kind of a fun challenge that people do. And so I did that one year, and I was like, I'm going to draw, after I started doing D&D stuff, and I was like, I'm going to draw all D&D monsters. And I did that, and I noticed my kind of stagnant followers on Instagram went up like a couple hundred followers. And I was like, oh, consistency breeds success. And so I was realizing like, I need to do more stuff. And instead of just every once in a while posting when I finish something. So that was the first kind of clue to I need to just do more. And it's tricky when you're working full-time job and doing other things and commissions. So I would try to post, sketch works in progress. I would post reaction videos. And then when TikTok started, I started doing TikTok in 2020, like everybody during the pandemic. And I was kind of hesitant, and I started doing, TTRPG characters, Pathfinder, D&D. But then I was like, well, what if I do stuff that I'm into, like other fandoms, like Marvel and Avengers and DC, Harry Potter,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Star Wars,
Yeah.
as D&D characters. So I started with Marvel, and the second video I did, I think, was Spider-Man, and I did like a kind of a roll for sandwich before roll for sandwich. I did this. I was like, we're gonna roll a random class and a random species and make that the thing, and whatever it was. I think Spider-Man was a drow cleric, which is not what you would make Spider-Man, but and so I got a lot of people, like it got like 200,000 views, just that one TikTok reel video, and a lot of people were like, he wouldn't be a drow. It was a lot of people just complaining, and I was like, oh my gosh, wait a minute, people love to complain about videos and what they don't like. And so I did it again. I did Scarlet Witch, and then a bunch of people liked that and also complained about that. And then and it just kind of kept going. And I did a bunch of bunch of different fandoms, and then sprinkled my own stuff every once in a while. And I was doing the little silly, D&D videos like that we all do. I love your guys's, by the way. They're always
Thank
kind
you.
of fun. Yeah, I mean, it was just kind of fun to be part of that community. So there's the, getting people to kind of laugh and stuff like that. And then, cause I come from an improv background, so that was very like exciting to perform again in
Totally.
some way, even if it's to myself in my office.
Mm-hmm.
And then just doing those consistent videos.
Having you talk about all of this makes me think so much of the content that we've created, especially
Mm-hmm.
the ones in that category of like, you do it because you think it's funny and you've got kind of this thing going for you. And the people who have that super angry reaction to something you said, or this is technically wrong, or that's not the rules, or like, if you're playing this way, that's stupid. And it's just like, yeah, I don't know. It's just funny. You have that little light bulb moment of, that's okay. You can,
Right.
I appreciate your comment. And I'm sorry I riled you up. I really I'm not trying to make people mad, but it kind of works,
Yeah. And I don't know if it was when I did those characters and maybe they just didn't like the class or the species I chose for them. They were like, they would never be a paladin, blah, 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 and I was like, okay, then you do it. I'm just doing this for fun, like whatever. And that's why I did the dice for a while. And then I kind of stopped because I was like, okay, well then if you're going to make a suggestion, then and I would just I would ask people to say, what would they be?
Yeah.
Then tell me. And then like, if I got a lot of people in the comments of one saying like, yeah, Doctor Strange has got to be a sorcerer or whatever. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. That tracks. He's Sorcerer Supreme. Okay, great. So, but then some of them I would still do myself. And then people would just be like, either fans of the fandom or fans of D&D would be like, oh, blah, blah, blah. But I think those were, I make it sound like a lot of people complain. They didn't. It wasn't as often as it sounds. And most of the people were like, this is really cool. And I think just followed for that. I do think I did Pokemon for a while. Mm-hmm. And I know nothing about Pokemon. So I was kind of just like, hey, it's a bird and he has an arrow. He's a ranger. And I heard a lot from Pokemon fans about like, rah, 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 they're a lightning class. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. So my lesson there was don't draw into fandoms unless you really know about the character.
Yes, I guess so. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying though, where it's not like the drama and the negative comments are maybe quite as big as like, I don't know, we make it sound for a brief moment, but for every video that gets a lot of traction and you get some people annoyed in the comments, it's like that came with a whole variable of how many people just followed you. Most likely because they just thought it was awesome. Right. And honestly, I think sometimes people are less likely to comment something positive than if they passionately feel super negative about it. But it's like, I don't know, at the end of the day, you were trying new things and putting out content that was 100% unique to you. Even if people had tried something similar in the past, it's still always going to be your art. Therefore, it's always going to be you. And people ended up following you for that. And now you've got this awesome community that you have on your socials. So yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, I'm happy to, when people find it or even people are saying, oh, I haven't seen something from you in a while, or, oh, this is really cool. And then it kind of comes in waves. So it's been a little stagnant recently, just with, I don't know, everything, but the every once in a while I'll come back to maybe some characters I haven't done, or I'll post a commission or something. And then it's surprising, like the ones that really take off or resonate with fans, like the ones I'm like, oh, okay, I'll just post this. And then every once in a while, even like original character or a commission art will take off. But yeah, most of them fly pretty low under the radar. Recently.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, my other question is, I just want to know if social media has led you to any particular cool opportunities.
So I think that the nicest thing is meeting people like y'all, going to conventions, at Gen Con, PAX U, and then just meeting people in person and just kind of being like, hey, this is cool. We all do this. And having that shared kind of community, it also helped me kind of get this connection with Beetle and Grimm's, which I do their social media for.
Yeah.
And at first I just did their logo and a few spot illustrations, and then I did t-shirt designs, and then I got to do some sketches for the Tal'Dorei Gazetteer for Tal'Dorei Reborn for that campaign that came out. And I had told him, I was like, I love Critical Role stuff. And, because I was watching that when I first got into it too. And I, was like, oh, you guys are doing that box for that. And is there any way I could be involved? And they kind of said, well, we need some like sketches, like in-world black and white kind of journal sketches. And I was like, cool. And it's all, 30 years after the events of campaign 1. So it's interesting because I was doing stuff that had never been like pictured before. Some things that were like, here's an area of a mountainside that is mentioned, but we haven't seen it. And then one of them was like a memorial garden, the Trinket Memorial Garden in Whitestone. And I was like, oh man, this is like, that's a big thing. But, so I did them and I put a lot of work into it. And then that was pretty fun to do. And then I think, 2 years ago, I did I was art director for a project where we did a bunch of monster art that we put on encounter cards, which are very cool, and everybody should go get them.
Oh, but, that sounds so cool.
And they're still compatible with the new D&D stuff. But I got to do a couple of monsters. So as a licensee of Dungeons and Dragons, Beetle and Grimm's got to kind of co-license that, and so I can say that I officially got some of my art published with with D&D and everything, which is really exciting.
Yeah,
some of my little monster art, which is pretty fun.
Yeah, wow, that's so cool, so cool.
That's like a bucket list.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. And it's like, not to say that was all due to your social media. Definitely not. You've got quite a resume of things going for you, but I love that your path was able to, kind of lead you to that, and you're able to do that.
I might have gotten to do it without that, but I mean, I think having done all of the stuff I did for social and having kind of that, community and confidence, like if I didn't have people that were checking it out, I'd probably be like, well, I don't know, maybe I should do something else. And then, but I stuck with it. And that, I think that definitely like contributed to wanting to keep doing it.
For sure. Well, that kind of wraps up what I want to know a little bit about your background. If we want to jump into our episode focus a little more, I want to know specifically how you feel that TTRPG art enhances the player experience.
Oh, it's so amazing. I mean, it's like I said, when I first started rolling my first character, my first inclination was, well, what do they look like? Like that's just kind of where my brain goes. And some people are all about like the stats, and some people are all about the backstory, and there's no wrong answer, right? But what I mean, when you make a character, what do you kind of do first? What's your go-to?
I do think the visuals are very, very important. And I'd say the look and personality for me are like the two things.
Yeah. So same. And I have the the blessing and the curse of like, I have to draw this now, so like some people are just like, I'm going to look it up. But for me, it's like, I have to draw out like what they look like. And then I realized, as I'm doing this, I can try to help other people do that too. But yeah, I think that's why, D&D and art go hand in hand. I mean, like if there was no artwork in the book, if it was just, the Dungeon Master's Guide or the Monster Manual, and it was just descriptions, that would be weird. Like you'd be like, something's missing. This is just a PDF of text, and it would just not be the same. It would not be the game. So I think for any TTRPG, having the art that goes along with it is hand in hand. Like that's what makes it. So like when part of the player experience is finding who that character is, and a big part of that is what they look like. And so I'm yeah, I love that when people have that passion of I gotta make this character what I have it in my head and I want to get that out.
Yeah.
So that's why I love working with people on coming up with what their character looks like, and sometimes they don't really know how that works, and I have to kind of give them a couple like, well, give me all the surface level stuff first.
Mm-hmm.
What do they look? What's their race? What's their how old are they? What do they have on them? And then it kind of goes a little deeper, like the underneath stuff, like what's their backstory? What kind of attitude do they have? And that all kind of feeds into the character portrait.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that when you're building a character, there'll always be some level of visuals in that involved. And you might think of a couple of key features of your character. But what I love about character art, whether that's somebody drawing it themselves or having it commissioned, is that it forces you to start to think a little bit deeper about it, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
start to ask those questions of exploration about who they are and what they look like. And it's like, oh, I don't know. And I think once you kind of go through that exercise and have that completed, it will only make your character experience richer after that.
Yeah.
Not only do you have something to visualize while you play, but you also have things to pull from, whether that's why they're like that or what their parents are like or what, how that speaks to their personality because they're disheveled or because they, are the opposite or whatever. But I think that only once you really have a reason to dive into the specifics of the visuals with art
Mm-hmm.
is where you get to really explore that. So to me, that's so valuable, And if you
Yeah.
don't need to do it, you can play D&D having never thought of specifically what your character looks like, but
Mm-hmm.
you might be missing out a little bit on certain aspects of that character. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely I mean, like you said, it's not something you need. It's something that just enhances it and makes it more personal. I mean, when there's no art at all, you don't know who you're fighting, what the monster looks like, where the setting is. It's all theater of the mind, and that's fine for some people. But I think having those visual cues, like even physical handouts, or I mean, then you get into other stuff and other props, music, everything like that that makes it more immersive. And the character art for me is kind of a key thing that makes it really immersive.
Mm-hmm.
And because you can look at artwork of your character and be like, yeah, I'm going to be them for the next 3 hours.
Yeah.
It just kind of helps you get in the zone.
Yeah, totally. So I want to hear more about the process of commissioning art for other people, because I also think
Mhm.
that, I mean, I'm not an artist for other people. Actually, I have drawn character art for our campaign, but
Nice.
like it's very, very far from a pro. But I just feel like that's quite a thing to take on, doing commissions for other people's characters and what that is like in their own head.
Yeah, it's a lot of it's a little bit of pressure, but I don't feel it that way anymore. But you're basically coming up with this new person, collaboratively with this other person that you never have met usually.
Mm-hmm.
And so I send out a list of questions once they've decided to hire me, or if I offer to do art for somebody, and I'll just say, hey, give me a backstory, give me emotion. I'll do a bunch of visual research on what they want. Like if somebody's like, hey, I want Viking braids, and I'm like, I need to know what that looks like. So I'll basically kind of build a little swatch library for that character.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they'll send me stuff, like the client will send me like, this is what I want it to look like, but they have wings and they're missing an arm and da 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 da. They'll like
Yeah.
take away things and add things, and but with this hair and blue skin, and I'm like, okay, so I can mishmash those all together. So it's kind of a combination of all that in the research sort of previs stage, and then I'll do a couple of sketches and of poses and attitudes and things like that, really rough. Send it to the client and be like, which one of these resonates with you? And
Mm-hmm.
usually, after seeing 4 sketches or something like that, they'll see one and they're like, that's it. I see that. I see my character in that. It's like it's like you see the potential, and it really resonates with them. And then I'll kind of take that and build it and refine it and clean it up and go to the next stages of like inking and color, and I'll show them along the way and be like, still good, how are we feeling? Sometimes they don't have any idea about color, they just kind of know about details.
Yeah.
So when it comes to like what color are their pants, like I don't usually ask every single thing. I just kind of throw some stuff out there unless they are very specific, and sometimes it just kind of works.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. So, I mean, maybe this is, well, I want to say that it's a rude question because I hate questions relating. Well, okay, maybe that seems dramatic. I hate questions about like, what's your favorite blank? I have a hard time choosing. Don't ask me, but I'm going to ask you. I want to know in that whole process, whether it's getting information from, a person that's getting a commission from you, and then you talked about like the sketching and the inking and the coloring and like all. You have a whole breakdown of that, what that looks like in your head. I want to know what part is your favorite, that you like get most excited when you get to that part.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me is the sketching, because I do a couple different versions of who this could be. And sometimes I'll know, like I'll hit one, and it's really not up to me if I'm not drawing for myself, but I'll do a couple of them and I'll kind of be like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like, and even if sometimes the client might not pick a certain one that I really like, and I'll be like, well, I'm going to save that in my back pocket for later, and just like, I'll put that into another character or something like that. But I think that's my favorite, because after that, it's like when you put ingredients or pasta in the pot, and then after that, you just kind of like keep going through the motions, and it will happen at that point. But once the meat hits the fryer, so to speak, it's that's the sizzle starts happening.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it's the sketch.
Yeah.
That, because if the sketch is off, then everything else is off. I mean,
yeah, totally. Well, and that makes sense too. You probably put some of the most creativity into that sketch part because you start with that blank page, you know,
bare bones.
Totally. That's awesome. I love that. So I want to know, other than original character art, what other art has to offer to TTRPG players?
Yeah. So we mentioned monster art before. I think that's huge. And that really is fun for players to see, like some intimidating beast or abomination, or, a visual of some place that they're going into. So it could be scenes, it could be runes, it could be like language. I mean, like that kind of stuff is I love it. I mean, when it's very immersive, and when I DM, I try to, maybe to my detriment, I'll like draw a map of what a city, or I'll do, this is what this NPC looks like. And everybody's like, why are you doing all this extra stuff? And I'm like, I don't know. But, if you listen to the Knights of the Roll Table, there's a couple times when I've DM'd and I'm like, on the podcast, I'm like, and I have a drawing of what these people look like. And they're like, of course you do. So, but it helps me, because for them, even as a DM, it helps me having the artwork to show, to kind of be like, helps me getting into the character. Like if they're wearing black and silk and their hair slicked back, I'm not going to be like, hi y'all, I mean, I'm going to try to get a character that kind of feels like what this person looks like. And it's like when you put a costume on or makeup on or something for a Halloween character, it's the same kind of thing. Cosplay, you know how that is.
Oh yeah totally And I do appreciate seeing as many visuals as I can get when I'm playing, because you can give me a monster description and probably a couple things are going to stick out, and like really I'm going to remember them throughout combat. But if I see a photo, I'm like, okay, first of all, I'm going to remember a lot more. And second of all, like it really just might change like how I interact with it. And even just the I don't know, the role play aspect of it as well. And it's not just monsters, like you said too. It's also it's NPCs. It's the town that you're in, runes, like all of that kind of stuff. I think helps me a lot. I maybe I just struggle with theater and the mind of the mind in general. I don't know, but yeah, and also getting into character. I would agree with that as well. So.
Well, I like the collaborative aspect of D&D. So, I mean, I've never, even though I really love describing stuff as a DM or hearing it described as a player, I think if you can say, hey, here's an image of what I'm thinking of what this city looks like, or what this, I don't know, person looks like. And then you can have the players be like, are they, do they have a limp or, like whatever. And like, if you can kind of build that together, it just adds more buy-in. Like it adds more kind of like player agency to the characters when they look at something and they're like, oh, cool. They can add to that. It's not just solidified and that's it. So you can build that with your group and they can add stuff, even though the artwork is just an entry to that character or that place or that whatever. But having monster art is very cool. And so one of the things that we do at Beetle and Grimm's is we make these, every box comes with monster encounter cards that you hang over the DM screen. So instead of holding up the classic problem is, you have the monster manual or a monster book, and then you would hold up the monster book and then try to cover up the stat block, like while awkwardly holding the book, and then you put it down, and that's the only time they get to see it. They see it for like 5 seconds.
Yeah.
So with these encounter cards, and there's other products out there that are kind of similar, is they hang over the DM screen so the players see this cool artwork. Sometimes it's from the campaign, sometimes we'll commission original art for it, and then on the back is the stat block. Right?
I love that.
It's such a cool, like, this is what we're fighting, and then they get to look at it and be like, oh, I hate this, whatever it is. Yeah. And because they're seeing it, and they're terrified of it, and they're just like, oh, I guess there's some gross monsters out there. So like getting to look at it and like really letting that art influence your decisions is really fun, I think.
Yeah, that's some art with some serious functionality, like how useful and also beautiful, So I love that. I'm really gonna have to check that out. And yeah, Cade, remember that. We're gonna go get some of those. Okay, so I'm curious if, well, I don't know. I don't know how, I don't know how many years you've been doing TTRPG art specifically, but since you kind of started that to now, I'm curious if your art style has changed over time, or even just like your process, since that's something you've kind of done for a while now.
Yeah. I mean, some of my early stuff, when I do any kind of art, whether it's, I've done caricature, comic strips, comic books, storyboards, like it always starts out kind of a little nebulous because I'm trying to kind of find my own style. And I think now it's been about 9 years. And I think now I've kind of gotten into a style I'm like pretty comfortable with.
Yeah.
It's sort of influenced by comic books. Like, so it's more line art and then it has like kind of rendered color and things like that. And traditional D&D art is more painted, whether it's digital paint or actual paint, painting on a canvas and stuff like that. So I haven't gotten into that, but when I've done these other projects and commission work, sometimes I have tried to do more of that. So if anything, it's helped me kind of push myself to learn the painting aspect of it, which is a completely different medium, literally. And I usually do it digitally. So using the iPad or whatever, and I'll not use line art and really try to get like a rendered piece, which takes a lot longer, but it's a good challenge. So I think if anything, it's my art's kind of evolved into using that sometimes and kind of trying out new processes, new brushes, new lighting styles, and not making it because it started out very cartoony and then it kind of has changed. At the same time, I have as I have two kids, they're 7 and 10, and I've been fortunate to do some sessions with them and
Oh.
and even like some of their friends, and I see this kind of void of like kids that want to play D&D or stuff that's similar. So I've been trying to, every once in a while I'll go through phases where I'm like, I'm going to do a couple characters that are really kid friendly, and it's a little bit more chibi-ish
Yeah.
style, or like, you know, uh big heads kind of look.
Mm-hmm.
And so I might be pursuing stuff like that. I can't say anything so far, but because I'm still concepting it, but I might be branching off into also doing a form of that that's specifically fantasy art for kids, where they can choose characters and they can do
Oh,
that.
fun.
Because I really think that's something that, when parents are like, yeah, you're going to be a elf wizard. Okay, cool. And for their little girl, and they look it up and it's this elf wizard, it's like, that's not what we want. Like, you
Yes.
want something that's going to be appropriate for your 10-year-old, not
Yes.
some of that early 80s D&D art is kind of, how do we say? Not much fabric there. So,
yes, no, for sure. That is kind of the direction that D&D is moving to. I think like younger and younger people are becoming interested in it because they know about it and it's awesome and it has that popularity. So yeah, I think there's a market there and interest in something like that. So that's very cool.
We'll see.
Yeah. We'll see. I also wanted to ask you if you have any art pieces that are particularly meaningful to you, or that have just brought you extra joy.
The aforementioned Critical Role piece was really cool. The monsters that I did for the D&D cards, the monster cards, meant a lot. Particularly, I did the goblin. I don't know how I was like, maybe I can get the goblin because we refer to ourselves at Beetle and Grimm's as goblins. We're like, oh, the goblins in the warehouse. And so I kind of was like, maybe I can do the goblin one, not thinking at all that they would approve that. And they were like, sure, take a shot. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I did it, and it was like painted, digital paint, and it turned out really good.
Wow.
And I was like really happy with it. It's this sort of traditional style goblin that's got a bow and arrow and a mohawk and everything. And I was, when I finished, when I finally got it approved and it came through, and I was like, okay, this is cool. This is like, I pulled it off. It wasn't just, because at least it wasn't some like, I also did like a method, it's like, okay, and method is just like, it's a method. But when you see a goblin, everybody fights goblins.
Yes.
So this is going to be one that a lot of people are going to look at. And I was very proud of that. I also think anytime I do something for a friend of mine, there's a little bit more pressure because I'm like, it's not just with a commission where it's like, okay, thank you, goodbye, and hopefully they like it. But with the friend, or somebody that I work with, it's like, okay, I really want to make this good and make it something that they'll like, because I have to I'm going to keep working with them. I'm going to keep playing with them or whatever. So I like doing stuff for people that I'm fortunate enough to like play in two groups, and I like doing characters for them anytime we start a new project or whatever.
Yeah, fun. I love that. That's a good variety of things that have held a little bit extra meaning for you. So that's wonderful. Okay, I often wonder if artists get tired of being asked about AI, because I feel like that happens a lot. But I am curious if you have any thoughts that you want to share about AI and art.
Yeah, I'm generally, I appreciate AI as a tool. I don't like the idea of using AI art as to sell, as like, here, we're going to do this AI art and then we're going to say this is original or whatever like that. And I don't think that maliciously happens a lot. I get that specifically in our sort of field, in our genre, our hobby, that there's a lot of people that have found very easy ways just to be like, I'm going to digitally create, through tools, my character by putting in a big long description and get something that they're, generally happy with.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen them and they're very pretty and beautiful and polished and whatever. But part of me is like, it's always kind of like you're settling, it's like you're like, well, it's not exactly, I mean, you can't get exactly what you want.
Yeah.
So these people are just like settling for like, well, this is a really pretty close attempt at what my character is, but they don't have that duck tattoo on their face, like,
right,
because you can't get those little specifics in there.
Yes.
I mean, it's different for everybody, but I think having a specific style that that you are passionate about, and if you're able to support an artist, I personally feel that's the way to go. And I would probably feel that way if I wasn't a fantasy artist trying to get commissions.
Mm-hmm.
I will say commissions have gone down, and I'm not the only one. They, in the last 2 years, it's been a hard market to get more work. And I've talked with other artists, and they're like, yeah, we're struggling to get those like original commissions. So I mean, it's doing more like commercial work because they're not going to use AI. That everybody's like, don't use AI. Like, I mean, we've seen it. We've seen wizards get slammed for that. Like, one piece of art that might have an extra thumb on their character or whatever. Like, and people will call it out, and which is really funny because everyone says they hate it, but then there's a lot of people that use it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
It's such a weird time. I think most people are going to. I think it's going to be like kind of like vinyl records. Like there's always going to be a market for original art, but and there'll be people that will appreciate it and that will never do AI. But then it's going to get to the point where you can just ask your computer, like, make a I don't know, like make a half orc with a scar on his face and he's got blonde hair and a blue streak, and you can basically describe and keep going with it and then get what you want. But what you can't say is like, do this in the style of this artist. I mean, you can do that. I should rephrase. You can do that, but it's not right.
Yes.
You should not do that. Like, you should not be like, do this in the style of these different D&D artists, because that's just stealing. So
yeah,
don't do that.
For sure. I hear what you're saying, where it's like, people are going to use it, and a lot of the time it's going to be in your own little home game. And I think especially right now, a lot of the results you're going to be like, oh, okay. Yeah. But I think that for the most part, people look at what it spits back out, and you say like, but like, not really, and I feel like and I know the technology is going to change and evolve and everything. But I do feel like, obviously, there's just a huge part of something missing in that art, right? And artists still have so much more to offer than what those programs can give. Yeah. And they still do have crazy limitations. And even as they fix bugs and things are technically more correct, you really will always be missing a little bit of a soul there. And I think, like you said, a lot of people really do feel that way. Like, that is the popular opinion. But to hear that commissions are going down too is like that like makes my stomach turn a little bit too, because people can be outward in one way, but maybe not. I don't know.
And that could be, I mean, I'm not blaming AI art for all of that. I mean, like, it could be the economy. It could be like people who don't have as much money for whatever. And I get that. Like, one thing that's great about D&D is that you could not spend a lot of money. I say could because, if you've ever gone to play D&D at a convention or gone to one of these things, you're like, ooh, dice, ooh, dice tower, ooh, this thing.
Yes.
I've got so many little dumb accessories that I love. I have a bench that I bought, a bench for dice, that the dice go on the bench when they're like off the playing field.
I love it.
I didn't need that. I didn't need to spend that $10,
Right.
but I was like, I need that,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what a lot of D&D accessories and creators make, is just stuff that you don't really need, but you kind of do.
Yeah.
And that's the community that I think that we're giving back to. So
Yes.
if you can support that, and get something that's more personalized, it's going to be a great experience. Yes, I keep hitting my mic. Yes, it's going to be, it's going to be money that you're investing in, but I promise you, it is worth it. Like you're going to be working with an artist that will ask questions and want to make it personal, and they will get those little details, and they will model it after what you want. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that's that it's that, like, if you ever watched this might be an unfair comparison, but if you've ever watched the Polar Express,
Yes.
that movie with like the CGI Tom
Uh-huh.
Hanks, and it's terrifying to me.
It
Like the first
is.
time I saw that, I'm like, what is happening with their face?
Mm-hmm.
They're all kind of like this blank expression, and they're kind of looking off into the distance and sort of talking to each other, and they all sound like Tom Hanks, and I'm like, what is this nightmare? I don't like this. This is not Christmas. So I see AI art as like that. Like every character is kind of just like this beautiful blank chocolate bunny of nothing, and nothing's in there, but
Yeah.
they're pretty on the surface. But yeah, it's so, I don't know. It's definitely something I hope that we evolve with. And look, AI art is not going away. I get it, and I love that there's some people that are so passionate about it. Like, yeah, it's great, and great, cool, use it. Just don't pay for it.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
don't buy something from somebody because they made it and then they said, yeah, I'm an artist because I made this using AI.
Yes, yes. It is,
Nah.
I think, important to kind of be able to distinguish, like, okay, here's where we know we've crossed the line. Of course,
Right.
there's going to be some disagreement and some gray area, but that's one of those places where it's like, all right, like that's definitely a problem. But you kind of mentioned earlier, and I agree that the D&D community is kind of known for using things in D&D that are not 100% necessary, but they just enhance the experience, right? We are trinket people. We are material
Yes, we are.
people.
We are
For a
trinket people.
game that is made by Theater of the Mind, we love our trinkets and our things and art and our dice and like all the stuff. And so I do feel like we have the perfect community to keep up a demand for art. And that's honestly one of my favorite things about just the audience of people that play D&D in general,
Yeah. I mean, you have a giant, I see it in the background. You have a giant D20, and I've seen the videos where you guys have like the big, what is it, like 4 feet wide? And it's not that big, but you have like a really big D20. I'm turning away from the mic badly. I have this plushy D20 that I got at a convention that I love, and it doesn't roll great at all. It's not functional,
Right.
but it's cute and soft.
Yes.
So like I have hexagon lights in the background that I got because they're hexagons. I didn't need to get those. They don't serve a function other than they're just kind of cool looking.
Yes.
But,
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. That's why we can have, conventions. Yeah, that vendor floor will be lined with D&D things because
it's great.
We are there to spend some money on it. So that gives me a lot of hope for artists of all kinds within the TTRPG scope, Yeah. So there are good things there for sure.
Yeah. I love going to conventions and I see something that we haven't seen before, kind of new, and you're like, oh, you did it. You found that thing
Yes.
that I didn't know I needed.
Yes,
I will do that thing. I will get that thing and support. I mean, I love seeing new ways of using dice towers and dice holders or accessories or whatever. So I mean, I think that's what I'm ultimately after, is like, what's the character art sort of thing that's missing.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't quite found it yet. I mean, like, it's not just doing character art, but that's what I was trying to do with like my Patreon, is like creating a library of characters that people could just use. And for some people that works, but for others it's not specific enough, and I get that. But for me, it's like, well, at least I get to draw my own, some characters. I get to take suggestions from patrons, and from people like tuning in, and they'll be like, hey, you should draw this, and I'm like, cool, and I'll do that, and it just kind of building this library over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But it's evolving, and it kind of changes what people need, and I don't know depends on where the game goes, and what the community wants. So you have to kind of adapt.
Yeah, that brings me back to some of the series that you've done on social media, though, that they have been unique, having that Marvel and D&D, but doing it with a dice roll to see which race and class they are. Like, that gives an example, I think, of something where it stops your scroll and you think like, whoa, I have not seen this before, right? Just like that thing that catches your eye on the vendor floor. And so I think you have done things like that. And that's part of where your audiences come from. So you have to stick out in some way in order to get those people that have an interest in you. So I think that's amazing. Okay, well, that wraps up all of my questions. I have loved our discussion today. Is there anything else that you just want to add on? Anything you feel like we've missed? Of course, I will make sure we shout out kind of where people can find you after this, but anything else?
Yeah. No, I encourage everybody that if you're listening to this, if you haven't played D&D, or if you haven't commissioned artwork, you don't even have to hire me, but like find some artists out there that you like. There's tons on Instagram, on ArtStation, on DeviantArt. You can probably find some on Twitter. Some of them are very pricey because they're professionals, but then there's some other ones that are just starting out. And if you find somebody that you like their style, try to support that, because that you will make their day as much as they will try to make your day. So it's really important, I think.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can say.
No, that's great. I think it's a fun challenge to take on, because truly within anybody's, personal budget for what they are able to pay for something like commissioned art, there is somebody out there for that. If you have a specific style that you want, there's somebody out there for that. It's just a matter of maybe doing a little bit of research to find those people. So that's fantastic.
And I will say too, like to add a little bit more value to it is sometimes, when I tell people, because they initially just want to get it and they're going to use it as their little avatar or like as whatever. But I'm like, you could print this up. We do it in high resolution. You could print it up, frame it. This is my character. Get a nice frame for it. I mean, like it could be something you could have printed up on a little, easel or like, on your phone or whatever, and be like, this is my character.
Yes.
You can have it in so many different places, and it's cool to show that off to other players. It's almost like a trading card.
Yes.
Where it's like, this is my character. And that's, trading cards. Maybe I should do that.
Trading cards. Oh my gosh. I love that. I also am obsessed with the idea of being able to like print off like a poster for your room, and just have it, like, how cool to be able to like look up and just like see your own D&D character, like something from your own imagination that somebody helped you bring to life. Like, coolest room decoration ever.
So Brooklyn, I was going to ask, I wouldn't be a good artist and community contributor if I didn't ask, like, what is a character that you would like to see artwork be made that maybe you haven't? And if you let me know, I can do that artwork, and then maybe we can collaborate on something.
Oh my gosh, I would love that. I would love that so much. Okay, let's talk about that. I'm going to have to think, because, oh man, I have a couple of thoughts in my head, but that would be fantastic. I would love that. And I'm already thinking.
I mean, it doesn't even have to be an OC. It could be like maybe it was a villain, maybe it was an NPC that never got visualized. But that might be kind of cool in like post-show activities to show, like on our socials, we could be like, here's the description. I'll be like, cool, let me go through this process, and then people could go to both of our social medias and kind of see the back and forth and like creation of this character that I'll make available to everybody.
Oh, that would be wonderful. And I can think of so many like significant characters that definitely never got a visualization, that especially now that our trilogy is complete, just like have value, like they're a big part of the storyline. So that would be fantastic. I appreciate that so much. Well, now everyone
sure.
has to really like, if somehow you're not already super invested in being able to follow Chris and all the cool things that he does, you can find him at Dungeon Heads on TikTok and Instagram and Blue Sky. And then you have your Patreon as well, where you have that whole library of art that you can use for your campaigns, which is such a fantastic idea. I love that.
Yep.
And then
it's only $5 a month.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I have over 200 characters on there, some black and white, mostly color, including all of the fan art stuff that I've done. And you'll have access to that artwork that you can use for NPCs, original characters, villains. I mean, it's a whole library, and it's always growing. That's the nice thing is once you're in it, I mean, you could pay $5 for 1 month and then download everything.
I was going to say, talk about affordable art. You know what I mean? But I get it. I understand because we have a Patreon too, and just that the value of that, and I get how that's like that's worth it for you. But people need to take advantage of that, because that's and I mean, man, just to think about the amount of hours that you've spent to create that, and then to have it available for anybody to access that at $5 is just like amazing. Amazing. And then you also have your TTRPG podcast, the Nice at the Roll Table, right? So tell us more about that.
So we're in our last season. We've similar to y'all.
Yes.
we've started in 2019. We're family friendly, so we don't use any excessive swearing or anything like that. We also are all from like an improv background, so we wanted to play different characters, and we thought, let's keep the seasons really short and digestible, like 10, 12 episodes. Some are a little bit longer, but mostly it's like you can get through it, a lot. It's not like 400 episodes, or that kind of thing. And so you can listen to it with your kids, with your preteens, that they'll get into it. My 10-year-old likes to listen to the characters and kind of hear how it works. And every season we rotate who's DMing. So one season will be like 4 characters or 5 characters, one person DMs. And the next season, the DM is a player. 2 or 3 of the characters from the previous season go on to a different realm inside of the world, and new characters come in. So each season kind of ties into each other.
Cool.
We've had an overall sort of a through line, but each season is like a new realm and a new DM and a new cast of characters with some from the previous ones, and players will come back, or characters will come back and they've leveled up. So maybe that wasn't the best decision. I don't know, but we've had fun with it, and it's very fun. And there's some funny, we have a lot of fun without, swearing a lot. That was a kind of a big thing, is we wanted our kids to listen to it. So, so we're very happy with that. And we're in our final season. Kind of the big bads are making their move. It's sort of like if Highlander, like there can be only one. So all of the villains of each season have sort of like whittled themselves down, and now there's like one, but they're getting more powerful as like their power transfers to whoever's left. So, and it's this like big tournament, and the knights, the knights of the realm, as we call the main characters, sort of like this underground sort of, justice system, that they get initiated into, and they're trying to get, take out all of these, higher powered villains as they get more powerful, but there's end game there. So it's very, it's pretty fun and very silly.
Oh, that sounds like a ton of fun. And seriously, like our shows really do have a lot of parallels. I mean, we did start both in 2019, and we just finished our final, season,
Congrats.
our campaign and our trilogy. And then if you're about to finish yours as well, and the fact that it's clean and that you have that focus on like digestible campaigns, our campaigns are longer, but we made the episode short underneath the same idea of wanting it to be digestible. So now I'm just thinking like, anybody who just finished Knocked Prone, which is going to be a good chunk, I think, of people who are listening to this new show, need to go over to your show and have a whole new series. And it'll be bingeable if you're like kind of wrapping up, there at the end, which is like my favorite. I love to be able to listen to like as many as I want to in a row. So like, that's just so perfect. So perfect.
Yeah. I got to DM the second season. It was really my first time DMing like more than one session, because I only done a one shot before that. So as classic DM, folly, as I did way too much, and I did way too much prep and way too much planning, and but it was still a fun season. There is a lot that happens, but there's some stuff that I'm stumbling with. And then I got to DM the fifth season about a year later, and it was night and day. Like I was super happy with how it turned out, and just kind of coming together, and it was really fun. So if you want to hear me DM fifth season, but if you want to hear me as a player, it's the other seasons in between, and I try to keep my character voices. I love doing voices and stuff like that. So DMing is kind of always fun, because I get to play all the NPCs, and I mean, there's all kinds. What's your favorite voice that you've done for a character?
Oh man, well, I would have to say campaign 2 of our podcast. I just did I think I liked it actually because it wasn't an accent. I had a voice. Yeah. Sometimes I was better at leading into it and making it distinct than other times. But I liked really focusing on having a voice. It was supposed to be like very like Disney princessy kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. I naturally have a very raspy voice, and I slur all my words together. It's very not princessy. And I just loved that. It was so fun. And it made me feel like I was embodying that character without the stress of feeling like I was butchering an accent. So that was my favorite.
Yeah. What did she sound like?
Oh no, I'm going to be scared. Actually, I should really know how to do this. I was a party princess for a couple of years, but she talked like this. She had a really high voice. I tried really hard to not make my voice raspy, which is really hard for me. But that's kind of how she spoke. So what's your favorite voice that you've done?
Oh my gosh. It's hard to narrow it down. That's the hard question.
Yes.
What's my favorite
Again,
character?
Favorites, right? It's favorites.
Favorites is tough. The favorite character I've played might have to be Biscuit, who is a gnome wizard, and he I pulled on my growing up in the South, so he kind of talks like this. He's like a little guy, and he casts spells, and he has really bad metaphors, like, oh man, this is gonna be so hard to hit all them with a fireball. It's like trying to get all the chickens in the same hen house. It's annoying and also super fun to talk like that. I also played an NPC. I played a villain who was a German vampire, sort of Strahd adjacent, yes. And he ran a death race in sort of a Antarctica equivalent, and his name was Victor von Schnell. And he talked like this, and he liked to speak very plainly and in a high breath. But everything that he spoke was very straightforward, and
that is so distinct. I love that.
Yeah, it was fun.
Oh, that's amazing. Oh, I love it.
I love doing those voices.
That is all I have, but we covered a lot of stuff and got a hit on kind of a variety of things, and I loved every minute of it. So, yes, we will definitely keep in touch, and thank you to everybody who has been here for today's episode. So now you know where to find Chris Daly with Dungeon Heads, and of course you know where to find all of our stuff. As always, we'll have everything that you need, anything that we reference during the show, in the show notes, so you can find it there, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.